Woo! Thank you, everyone. You are still here. This is cool. So today I'm gonna tell you how I got married to Tailwind.css. So who of you heard of Tailwind? Hands up, hands up. Okay, who knows about Tailwind? Who has tried it? Oh, less hands. And who uses it regularly? Yes, even less hands. That's good. So I'm here to talk about CSS on a JavaScript meetup. I hope you won't damn me. But yeah, I have a goal today. What is my goal? I want to motivate 3 people to try Tailwind. Really, you don't have to do anything, but just try it. And when you try it and when you get interested in it, I've reached my goal and I'm really happy. So what's the story I'm going to tell you, or how would I motivate you at all? So first of all, I'm going to tell you what is Tailwind for all of you who don't know it. And secondly, what problems does it solve? So why should we care using it? And third one, how did I get convinced? Because I'm very hard to convince, as some of you might know. So how did I get convinced to get married to Tailwind? Fourth, a quick start, how you could get into the topic, how you could start using Tailwind. And at last, future and improvements. So what could be possible, or what do I want to do with that, or we? So yeah. So what is Tailwind? Let me try that. Whoop. Gonna watch videos. It's a utility-first CSS framework for rapidly building custom designs. So the video shows it best, so I don't have to tell a lot. It shows you, by just using classes, how to style your HTML responsively without writing any CSS. So the thing is, it's utility first, so you have utility classes. As you might guess, it's text center, text large, text purple. So you have utility classes for all this stuff. And you can have modifiers there, which you see with MD and so on, to modify these utility classes. So this might seem intimidating in the beginning, first time you see it, but it was also intimidating to me. But yeah, let me tell you something about it. So maybe I can convince you. So what the utility first? What is that? Imagine you want to build stuff like that. You have a small thing with some text, with an image, a bit of shadow. What would be one possibility? One possibility to be have the DOM, attach classes to everything. You have a small DOM, it's not too big. And yeah, then you have all the classes with some nice naming. And then you need the CSS in addition to style this thing. This is an okay way. I mean, it's totally possible. That's okay. But yeah, there is another way. Like this, it might seem also intimidating at first glance, but it's all. You don't have to write more. You don't have to switch to your CSS and toggle files or split your screen or anything. You just write the classes. And yeah, that's also a possibility. So these are some classes. There is maybe some reputation. So I want to tell you about some hard rock stuff because, yeah. So we want to get high and dry. This is a really cool album from Def Leppard. I recommend it. So the first thing, in the last thing in the last talk was, in the first talk, if you remember one thing in the end, remember this. It's a cool album. Listen to it. So. Why dry? So, yeah, you imagine you have 2 buttons. You could style it like this. You apply all the classes there, and you already see at the edge, there's some repetition. There's a repetition. You have the padding classes py, -2, and so on. So it's not so dry. So what could you do? You could extract this and write CSS. So this is a possible way in Tailwind, like you combine classes to one. You build a combo here. The issue with this approach is that you still have potentially painful duplication, so I cannot really convince you with that. But there is another way. If you take a look at this and you really try to find similarities and group stuff differently, it's way easier. So you could create custom classes and you build like a button with all the with all the stuff which they share, the buttons, and then you have more specific for the blue one, for the gray one, and you have hover classes. So you have many different ways to do, to approach stuff. So this is the Tailwind way. It's not the Tailwind way, but you combine classes to really build. You combine your utility classes to really style your DOM. So what problems does this solve? Really, there's always this rant about CSS and scope and how you could, it's global and it's really hard and there are many ways to avoid this and go around this. For me, when I tried it, it was really, you think less when you're styling. You use classes instead of CSS properties, which means you don't have to find in project. Imagine you have a class like button primary and you want to change something like that. You think, maybe it's a good idea to look in the whole project where this class is used, and maybe I will break something. So there is always this uncertainty of breaking stuff. When you're really on scope, like in the DOM element, and you apply the classes there is no side effect because you're styling this exact element and nothing else. And you don't have to think about naming. There are really cool naming conventions and all, BAM, we know all that. But you don't have to name your stuff. You just don't think about naming, you just style it. So this is also really, really nice. And as an example here, we have like this text, which is really important. And we have a class, and we style the class. Now imagine you want to style that differently. You have to look through all your project and check, where are overrides, where is this used? And I want to change the line height maybe, and does this break, or does something look odd maybe? So you just avoid the whole CSS, and on the right side, you use two utility classes to style it red and to set the line height with leading tight. Another problem what this thing solves is you have responsive utility classes. When you use some frameworks, you have maybe margin classes, padding classes, but then you need a padding you need it smaller on mobile and bigger on desktop, but there's maybe just one class, so you have to invent text or anything. This is why there are variants, we call it variants, to supercharge your classes. What do I mean by that? All of the utility classes there are in Tailwind, you can prefix them with such modifiers like MD for medium screen or hover. When this span gets hovered, the text will be red. Or you can combine these modifiers. Like on medium, when the text is getting hovered, it will be blue. So you can configure when you're include Tailwind in your build process, or just use it, what utilities you want to use. They are grouped, like you have responsive for all these medium, small, large modifiers. You can have hover, and you can really decide which variants you want to use. What this also enables us, we can really establish flexible design systems with that, because it's utility based. I'm going to show you later how this worked out for us in the project. So you declare your design system, your style guide. What might be, you have designs for your website, you know what it's going to look like, or maybe even better, you have a design system. When somebody thinks about stuff like that, it's really good. And it's easy because you check the design system, see the spacing, see the typo hierarchy, see the colors, and then you just put them into your Tailwind config.js, and you generate your utility classes, so all of this stuff will be applied on your DOM. And you go from atoms to components, which means you style the small bits first, you really take care of typography, you take care of spacing, and then you go bigger with components, like you combine this stuff and build bigger components with that. And there is a way, like for forms, you don't want to put 10 classes on each input, and if somebody forgets one class, it looks different. You can build combos for that, like I showed you previously. Like you have an input, like text and you have a class, which I just prefixed here with TW input. You can name it just input too. And then you build combos out of these utility classes, which you can reuse. This is especially useful for forms because they repeat all the time, and you don't want people to look up like, how should I style this form? What does this do, and what possibilities do I have? So you can build combos from all the classes. And since we're JavaScript today, it's CSS only. So you can use it. There's no JavaScript in Tailwind, like with Bootstrap or anything. You can use it with a favorite JavaScript framework, so it's possible to use it with Angular, with Vue, with React, everything you want. That's really cool because it's so focused and it does one thing and it does it really, really well. So it's just CSS styling and you can combine it with your JavaScript frameworks. What I think is really cool when I worked with it, I noticed that there is really less cognitive connection between your CSS and JS because we also want to decouple stuff and not have it coupled like style or change behavior based on CSS classes. So it's really easy for onboarding. At first it might seem intimidating, all the classes, but you have less cognitive connection. You don't have to think about what you can crash basically when removing classes. So it's really easier for new ones getting in, and you can progressively enhance your elements. So you start with a span, which looks ugly. Then you start with the typography, you start with the spacing, you start with the color. So you progressively enhance your components with the classes and with styling. And of course, Tailwind is not the only one doing that. There is more utility-based CSS stuff like tachyons or other frameworks. So it's not they're not the only ones doing that. So third, how did I get convinced of doing all this, what I tell you today? Quick history lesson. I'm working some buildings from here at Nettoral, and we are building projects for our customers. And so very, very early on, there was a lot of, I read lots of Bootstrap stuff, and I don't really like it. It's not my kind of thing. It's so static and everything looks the same when you style it, and there has to be something better. So I discovered UIKit, which is similar to Bootstrap, but yeah, way better in my opinion. So we started out with UIKit 2 and at some point moved to UIKit 3, migrated all the stuff. And then I discovered, yeah, well, like with UIKit, this is the exact case for margins. You need to style something with different margins on medium screens or and on large screens. So there are some classes, but not all of them. Yeah, you have always limitations and you feel kind of, you're limited to the framework. So I discovered, what about utility-based stuff to really connect simple parts together to progressively build your components. So I came up with, I found tachyons. So what I really liked about it was the minimalism. It is really, check out the website, Tachyons, CSS. It's really cool in terms of minimalism and typography. They really care about typographical hierarchy. So, because many websites are a lot of text, so it's most of the part of the website is text, so it's really take care of styling that because it affects the user. What was a bit of a downside was the maintenance, because there are not too many maintainers and it got stuck a bit, and so it was a bit hard to use that thing in a company for projects where you're not certain, how will this play out in half a year or maybe a year or even later. So we decided, let's stick with UIKit for now. But yeah, you have colleagues, and some of them might approach you, we really should try that new thing. Have you heard about it? So there is this pill to take. Should we try the new thing? It's pills. Is it a good idea? So I wanted to make a sustainable choice I won't regret just because of a mood or enthusiasm to step into something, choose it, and then might regret it. So how can you do that? So how can you make a sustainable choice? It's really hard. So I was checking out the documentation, everything, and the first thing which really caught my eye was the performance aspect. Because with all those utility classes, it's a lot of utility classes, but you won't ship all of them because there is purge CSS. With purge CSS, the principle is really simple. You process all of your template files. You say, this is my folder where all the templates are. This can be Vue files, anything, JavaScript, Angular, doesn't matter. It's plain text. It will parse them, check the used classes, and remove all the rest. And you can also whitelist stuff. So it's not simple parsing. You can whitelist stuff, and there are some really nice mechanisms to drop out all the stuff you don't use. And there are also ways to to deal with dynamic classes. Like, yeah, simplest way would be whitelisting, because you won't use every single width class in the whole scale spectrum, so you can whitelist them. Or when you have some dynamically generated classes with JavaScript, that's also possible. So I want to try that. What was the possibility to try that? Fortunately, there was really a low-risk project, because it's project-based, so the budget was okay. There were a few technical unknowns, like we knew what we did and what we're gonna do, and there will be low maintenance of the project, so it was a good opportunity to try that before diving right into it. And so the decision I made, or what was really important for me, that I thought, well, let's take the time and learn stuff. Because it always takes time to learn stuff. It's not, you can't know it from one day to another. It will take some time for your mind to process all the stuff and everything. So what was really cool was the enthusiasm from my colleagues. They all said, oh, really, let's do this. And I thought, well, it would be a waste to not do it and not to try it. Just let's do it and try it. And because it's low risk, it's not too bad. If it can't really go wrong, because it's just CSS. I mean, come on, it's not JavaScript. So I would really want to utilize the enthusiasm and encourage it and really try to use it and think about it. And then decide afterwards, like after this project, it has a scope, it has a limited time frame, so we can really see. So I thought, well, okay, give me the half of the pill and a way out. I won't take the full pill, give me half of it and a way out, and it's fine. So never underestimate the enthusiasm there, and yeah, I thought, well, let's try it. So how did we do this technically? Most of the time, or for many projects, we use a Symfony setup connected with Storyblock. So it's server-side rendering with PHP and Twig. Don't want to hear anything about PHP, all of you? Let's talk afterwards. And we started out with SES, of course, because also UIKit used it, and we had variables and imports and nested classes and everything. And for the JavaScript stuff, we have plain ES6 or Vue.js and Webpack for all the building and code splitting and everything, and Gulp for the asset pipeline and browser sync and starting the whole project and everything. So this is our main frame of the project. So what was really interesting here, I was thinking, well, this whole Tailwind stuff uses post-CSS. So I don't want to have two preprocessors, why? Or pre and post processor. So why don't we go full on post-CSS? Because the framework uses it anyway, and it's a way of trying. So why post-CSS? Why should we try that? Because it's, from my feeling, it was more modular than SCSS. You had the same stuff. You can have variables, you can have nested classes, you can have imports. So it's way modular than SCSS to include this stuff. And then it's this is really cool. Post-CSS preset, and some of you might know Babel. It's similar to CSS. So you have, when you use Babel or when you transpile your code, you might have a browsers list file in your project where it lists all your browsers you want to support, and then based on that, your JavaScript will be built, or maybe different packages. So post-CSS preset uses the same browsers list. You don't have to declare this thing extra. It uses the same browsers list, checks can I use for all the properties, and stuff gets built based on that browsers list. And yeah, you can have all the stuff you have in SCSS. You have custom properties, so variables, but natively, so no other way. You can have imports, and you can nest your stuff. So some quick words about the workflow. It took me like half a day to make it work, to tear out SES, pull in Tailwind, adjust the boilerplate, adjust the setup. What really helped me out was a VS Code plugin as a cheat sheet, because you have some classes, and there's really a nice plugin for all the IDEs to have this autocomplete and see everything without checking the docs all the time. The approach was also really interesting. When you have the designs, you have the fully designed pages, and then in addition to the designs, you have a design system where it says this is our typo hierarchy, this is our colors, these are our spacings between the components and everything. So we tried to to extract that design system into the Tailwind config. And so our utility classes will fit the design. So you can override your stuff. They picked really good defaults, so when you don't want to override anything, you can start with that. It's really easy, but you can also override stuff for custom projects and custom designs. And then we just started building components. We threw that stuff in and started with the first component, and yeah, so just get going. So now how there are so many approaches to get into this. That's why I just list them here. I really want to encourage you to either start plain, because it's just CSS, you just edit, throw it in, try how it feels, or you add it to your custom setup. We use it not just with Symfony, we also use it with Angular, so you can speak to Daniel in the first row with the red sweater when you want to know how we work with Angular, how we build the design system with that, and Tailwind. And in the beginning, please don't panic. There are some classes, as I might say sometimes today. Don't panic. Just use the search of the Tailwind website. It's really good. Just type in what you want. It will deliver results. It's, yeah, go for Tailwind. So start with the search, type it in, and after a while, it takes you some hours or maybe days to get on with it. Depends on how intense you're doing it. Add your IDE plugin. No matter which IDE you're working, just try, or get a cheat sheet. But yeah, cheat sheets tends to be long and not searchable, so it's sometimes easier to have an IDE plugin. And what really helped us to utilize it was the component-based approach. So we don't start with static templates and whole pages. We really start with components and style single components and go bigger and do component after component. We started with the grid. So today was the release of Tailwind 1.2, and it's one of the first CSS frameworks so popular to really utilize a native CSS grid. Today they launched a version where it's included to really have CSS grid natively in a utility way. So it's easier to use. So we started with the grid to have a basic layout, then with the typography, and then with the spacings. And what's really helpful for me, I have a sample markdown file which lists like all the headings, paragraphs, styled lists, unstyled lists, ordered lists, everything. So I just push it in, see how it looks, and style all the whole system, and see how it gets together and how it will fold up. So, and the last thing which I really want to encourage you for when you start trying this, give yourself some time. There is so much stuff going on the whole day. There's new packages, new ideas, new frameworks every day and all the time. Give yourself some time, sit down, get a cup of tea or anything, and really try and try to get into it. So when we started to use it, there are some ideas I wrote down during the usage. So what could be possible for, or what's maybe interesting for you. So there are many classes. If you use utilities, some classes, and group together, and I want to have or think of a way to order them or combine them logically. Because in a team where there are multiple people and you have like 10 classes, people tend to look different and might oversee something. So I want to think really about ordering and grouping them. Maybe there is a way, there are many ways. So what is the best one? Let's talk about it. So it's about improving the combo readability. When you group classes together, how can you improve the readability so people know where the stuff is happening, so they don't overlook a text class or a size class or a spacing class. So how to combine that. Because like in CSS, when you write normal CSS and you have a class with 15 properties or 20 properties, there are different approaches for ordering it, having it alphabetically, grouping it by some logical groups, positioning and padding and margin and everything, and text styles. So how could we improve the readability of that, or work with it? And what's also interesting for me, because it's just CSS, how will this play out with other JavaScript libraries, because you have more extensive UI components like overlays, sliders, modals, or more logic stuff. So how could we combine that with JavaScript libraries? As I said at the beginning, it really combines well and it's easy to integrate because it's framework agnostic, because it's just CSS. You can use it with a favorite JavaScript library or framework. So really see how this works out. What's also really interesting is this website. It's from the same guys like Tailwind itself. They are trying to extract reusable components, which is a bit hard when you start with the utility first, and then they try to combine them to make it even more easier to get in and dive in. Is they create this Tailwind UI. It's not released yet, but you can sign up for the infos and news, and it's really interesting stuff, like really interesting. They have some articles where it's about details and aligning stuff and forms to make it not that one pixel shifted, but really in line, and it feels good. So what's also really interesting for me in the future, let's share the experiences together, like really talk about how you think it's working. Does it work good? Does it feel good? What could we improve? And yeah, really share the stuff, because there's so much stuff coming up, and talk together and see how this plays out. So, quick summary, because I know you want some beer. So let's have some summary. So summary first, then beer. Okay, so what is Tailwind? It's utility-based. You start using utility classes to combine to really build your components. So what problems does it solve? It's solving scope, because you just start writing. You don't have to think about names. And it's when you're writing there and you're sitting there and coding that one component, you don't have to worry about any side effects anywhere else in another component. The variants, which makes it really flexible to use, because you have all the responsive variants, you have the hover variants, and all this stuff gets stripped out in the end by Purge CSS. And you can really stay focused on the HTML or on the component, whatever templating language you're doing. You don't have to switch all the time and think about naming and how is that named and how is this named. So you can really focus on the stuff you're doing, and you don't have to switch to anything else. Okay, so how did I get convinced? It was cool that there was a low-risk project, so really to try this and see how it plays out. The Purge CSS combination is just so powerful, because it's so easy to integrate, and the enthusiasm, because really people in the beginning when I came here were like, oh, we're so excited about your Tailwind talk, we don't know how to use it and everything. So really use that enthusiasm, try it, don't be scared in the beginning. So for the quick start, just pick a project you have, blindly try it in a new branch, or start with a fresh one, experiment a bit, try to really utilize the docs. The search is so good, it's really easy to find your stuff, you don't have to look up. Get an IDE plugin for even quicker lookup for the classes, and take some time to try it, really. I encourage you to take some time to try it. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed it, and there are maybe 3 people who want to try it. You don't have to raise your hand or anything. So my name is Klaus, I work at Netral. We are doing cool projects for some customers, so just hit me up if you want to know anything in detail about code, about the build process or anything. I'm here outside. And I will stop CSS now and now talk JavaScript again. Thank you.
Thank you, Klaus, for this talk. I'm serious. If you are going to try Tailwind in the next few days, drop us a line, send us a tweet, send us a message on Facebook, send us an email. I would really like to know if you try it out. And I'm quite sure that we can get to 3 or even more people.
So he's the first one.
I've already tried it. Sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm already convinced. Yeah. Tess.eu uses
there's
Tailwind.
proof.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Klaus. We are really looking forward to your next talk, how we got rid of PHP on our servers.
I'm here.
Have another drink and enjoy the evening.